After that, he met Juanita Formoso, who was referred to by everyone as Jay. She was also well respected in her career, a single mother and an air traffic controller. She had just come out of the ruins of a 20-year marriage, much like Gene. They were sympathetic to one another's suffering and their common experience of beginning anew. Ever the gentleman, Sean took his time. Their friendship grew gradually and methodically, based on a sincere bond rather than loneliness or desperation. However, there was something unique and valuable between them right from the start, worthy of being nurtured and protected. They kept their relationship quiet at work for 2 years, not out of embarrassment, but rather because they wanted to keep something valuable apart from their work life. However, as their relationship became closer, Gene realized he had discovered what he had been looking for. Jay served as more than simply a friend or a means of forgetting his ex-wife. His future lay with her. JJ was thrilled when Gene proposed. After a great deal of suffering and disappointment, fate had finally brought them together. They decided to construct a new house in the peaceful, safe, and gorgeous community of Land O'Lakes. Ideal setting for their new beginning. They were married in front of close relatives and friends in a modest ceremony. And Gene and JJ experienced true happiness for the first time in years. However, they were unaware that their bliss had a limit, that the danger to their future was already present and getting closer by the day. Something unexpected occurred 3 months after Gan relocated to Florida. Bob Peterson also moved to Florida, not only to Florida, but to the St. Petersburg Clearwater Control Tower, which was the precise location where Gene worked. Bob gave a straightforward explanation. He also desired a new beginning, and the facility had opportunities. It would be unwise to pass up the chance. Gene was unsure about how to interpret it. Although the coincidence seemed odd, Bob was a reliable worker who was quiet and professional. Perhaps it was merely a coincidence. Gene and JJ decided to sell their current homes, as they got ready to move into their ideal home. At that point, Bob made a unique proposition. He desired to purchase Gene's home. Gene found it a little peculiar, but until Bob made an unexpected request, she didn't see anything wrong with it. He desired to buy the residence, as well as Gene's, pillowcases, and bed linens. Gene felt certain that Bob was kidding. Who offers to purchase someone else's used bedding? Naturally, Zhang did not part with his bed sheets, even after the sale was completed. Bob's dissatisfaction was obvious and disturbing. Gene and JJ's new house was eventually completed in 2006. They were ecstatic and eager to start this new phase of their lives together. Bob, however, insisted on going to see them at their new home. He said he had a unique present for them that would symbolize their fresh start, but he was unable to bring it to work. This made the pair feel uncomfortable. Bob had received no invitation to their wedding. They didn't anticipate receiving a present from him. Their professional boundaries were unambiguous. Bob, however, persisted. Bob brought a pricey crystal vase when he eventually showed up there. Given that Bob had not attended their wedding party, Jane and JJ were uneasy about the lavishness of it. They made a choice they would later regret because they felt bad about it. Bob was invited to join them for supper. Naturally, Bob was overjoyed. This was precisely what he had planned for when he brought such a lavish present. It was supposed to be a routine evening meal at the TH home in Pasco County on November 1st, 2006. However, the vibe fell off from the time Bob arrived. He was happy, chatty, but his actions had a level of intensity that caused Gene and JJ to look at each other uncomfortably. Bob showed no signs of leaving and arrived early. He sat down as though he intended to remain all night and ate many portions of each dish. He then gave them a big leather-bound photo album as a second gift. Gun and JJ's bewilderment gave way to fear as they started turning the pages. There were high-quality pictures inside that showed their home's full construction. The transition from an empty lot to the completed house was depicted on page after page. Pictures of their draperies, furniture configurations, and other features of their private area were included. JJ asked the obvious question in a tremulous voice. "You've been visiting our home for a long time." Bob would respond with pride in his voice every few days. "I took pictures of everyone's homes while I was at work." It was a terrifying realization. Bob had been observing them, taking unauthorized pictures of their house, and violating their privacy while claiming to be interested in art. Feeling stuck, Gene and JJ exchanged passionate looks. Bob didn't appear to be planning to go. Then JJ's adult daughter showed up like a lifeline. "That evening, they had an appointment. In the hopes that Bob would take the hint and go, JJ stated that she had to go. He didn't. Startled and becoming more uneasy, Jay turned to face her husband in the hopes that their unwanted visitor would have left by the time she got back. She was unaware that this would be her final encounter with Gene. Music Bub informed Gene that he had one more present for JJ after she had left with her kid, but it was in his car. He brought a letter back. The shock Gene must have had upon reading Bob's words is beyond our comprehension. Bob had written, "I have loved you for a while now. However, every time I tried to tell you, I chickened out. This wasn't friendship affection. This was something completely different. Something really unsettling and compulsive." The letter became menacing after Bob admitted that he wasn't sure if he was gay, but that he loved Gene. Bob declared that until they had a private meeting, he would not leave the house. Bob commented, "I feel like I've been living a lie for years, and I'm at my breaking point. I had previously prayed for God's pardon." The ultimate caution sign ought to have been that last sentence. Bob had already begged for pardon. For what purpose? Because of what he was going to do. Bob's car was gone when JJ got home. The first wave of relief passed quickly. Then she noticed the driveway's blood trail. After that, there was a bloody heap of her husband's clothing on the ground. The message to Gene was then placed on the end table. Both Bob and Gene were nowhere to be seen. When JJ attempted to call her husband, his phone was at home. Given the volume of blood, there was no question that a horrible incident had occurred. She noticed something as she passed through the living room, a casing of a bullet on the ground. The terrible reality became crystal clear at that very time. Her house had been the scene of a gunshot. Bob had stolen her husband after he had been shot. Jay's hands were shaking as she dialed 911. Deputies from the Pasco County Sheriff's Office rushed to the scene in a matter of minutes. Immediately after, a thorough search was launched for the dangerous suspect as well as the victim. It turned into a protracted, excruciating wait for JJ, who clung to the notion that Gene was still alive in some way, no matter how unlikely. Officers hurried to Bob Peterson's Lutz home, but it was empty and dark. There was no sign of Gan. Deputies found an important document during their investigation, a rental agreement for a home in Safety Harbor, Florida. Bob had prepared this ahead of time. Deputies were sent to the Safety Harbor property 2 days after Jean vanished. What they discovered within was really unsettling. Bob Peterson was lying on the bed in the master bedroom, dressed only in his underwear and a t-shirt. He had committed suicide. Gene Thurnau, who was also shot, was on the floor next to him. However, the gunshot was not the end of the bloodshed. Gene's body was disfigured. A last deed that demonstrated the terrifying intensity of Bob's passion after stalking Gan across state lines, integrating himself into Gan's new life, and invading his privacy. Bob Peterson committed an unimaginable act of violence when his approaches were turned down, as they would undoubtedly be. He subsequently committed suicide because he was unable to deal with the fallout from his actions. Everyone who knew Gene Thurnau was grieved by his passing, but Juanita was the most affected. The lady who had at last discovered happiness, who had created a future and a home with the man she loved, now had to understand how everything had been destroyed by a single act of compulsive violence. JJ told investigators about Bob's strange behavior around Jane, but she maintained that she was unaware of the extent of his obsession. How was she able to know? Bob had appeared to be innocuous, just another coworker. A little strange, but never dangerous. JJ was positive that her husband had flatly refused Bob when investigators found out that he had made a sexual approach to Gan that evening. Gan would never have felt the same way Bob did. Following this catastrophe, JJ showed incredible sensitivity. She subsequently stated, "I don't hate Bob. How can you hate someone who is mentally disturbed in an appearance on Investigation Discovery?" She thought back on her happy times and expressed gratitude for knowing Gene and knowing what it was like to be genuinely loved. Although dealing with such a catastrophe has been extremely challenging, Jay attributes her strength to her trust in God. She now favors maintaining the privacy of her present existence. However, it seems that she has found some peace and is moving on while keeping Gene's memories close at hand. This instance poses troubling queries regarding obsession, the warning indicators we overlook or ignore, and the peril of someone who sees another person not as a sentient human being with agency and autonomy, but rather as a possession object. Bob Peterson's actions raised more and more concerns. The stalking across state borders, the unwelcome observation, the mimicking, and the desire for personal belongings. However, any behavior by itself could be justified as innocuous, strange, or socially awkward. The pattern of fixation leading to violence is only apparent in hindsight, when the whole picture is in view. When Gene Thurnau passed away, he was 47 years old. He was on the verge of the happiness he deserved after overcoming the anguish of divorce, rebuilding his life, and finding love once more. Someone he wanted to befriend, while others avoided him, and whom he had only been kind to throughout his life, took it from him. Gino, may you rest in peace. Even though your life was tragically short, people who knew you were moved. Your memory endures in the hearts of your family and friends, because you filled them with laughter, love, and warmth. We will always remember the love you offered and the joy you shared. Music, we appreciate your interest in unreal true crime. Check out our brand new channel, Latin Crimes, where we delve into the captivating real crime tales of Latin America. If you're interested in mysteries from around the globe, don't pass this up. For more exciting investigations, subscribe now.